This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to order Jamie Glazov's new critically acclaimed jihadist Psychopath, how he is charming, seducing, and devouring us. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, the Israeli apartheid accusation. Who are the real victims of apartheid? With us this evening, Diane Biederman, the author of The Serpent and the Red Thread. Diane, what a pleasure and an honor to have you back on the Glazov Gang.
Thank you, Jamie. Good to be back.
Fantastic. Diane, you wrote a very profound blog on your website the other day on this issue and pointing out that, of course, as we know, the Unholy Alliance, the left, and the members of, I guess you could call of Islamic supremacism are always accusing Israel of being an apartheid state. And you exposed this falsehood and fallacy. Why don't we first begin with you telling us what apartheid really means and how apartheid and segregation was practiced in South Africa, and also, of course, as we know, in the past in the United States?
Okay, I'd like to start with the United States first. In the South, before the war, and then after the Civil War, and then after until about 1965 with the Civil Rights Movement, there was legalized separation of the races. It was called segregation. And it was held there by the thing called the Black Codes and the Jim Crow laws, which is a derogatory term. These were laws on the books that clearly stated Black and white must be kept separate at all times. They couldn't go to the same restaurants. They couldn't drink from the same fountains. They had separate schools. They had separate hospitals. If they went to see a doctor, they had separate entrances. We know about the story of Rosa Parks on a bus to sit with everyone else. She broke that law. She was the one to say, enough with this legal separation based on color. That was in the United States. In South Africa, the word segregation is apartheid. So what people don't realize, or they choose not to know, is apartheid and segregation in the United States are exactly the same thing. In South Africa, the laws were passed to totally separate Black from white. The Black people were put in separate places to live. They also had separate water fountains, hotels, hospitals, restaurants. Everything you do in your day-to-day life was separated because of race, because of color. And that is what segregation and apartheid mean. And it isn't something that's just, it just happens. It is based on law. And that's pretty much the summary of apartheid and segregation in the United States and in South Africa.
And thank you, Diane. And we need this paradigm and this historical understanding and the definition to examine, as you did, the absurdity of the accusation against Israel today. I just want to say this, though. Hey, look, we are all aware of, of the evil and of slavery. And of what had happened in the United States, and of course the discrimination and the Jim Crow laws and all that afterwards. Horrible, rooted in a lot of pain, just terrible stuff. And we should be honest about that history and be honest about the injustice and the pain that it caused and all of that. And yet we also have to keep in mind that it was the beauty and the absolute sacredness of the foundations of America in the sense of the Declaration of Independence, in terms of the Constitution, in terms of the Judeo-Christian tradition, it was that foundation of America that allowed the erasing and the cancellation of all of that segregation and evil and led to the beautiful society that America emerged into. Why I'm saying that is it's important to know also about what America did to get rid of slavery and to work on better race relations and equality. And in South Africa, of course, apartheid, evil system. and you've described it, you expanded on it in your article and in your blog. But what I just want to stress before we move forward is, while we recognize these evils, where is the media, where is the international outrage about what South Africa has become after apartheid? We're not justifying apartheid. We recognize it was evil and unjust. But post-apartheid South Africa, I mean, it's just a hell. And there's also a lot of racism being practiced today in reverse, as we know. And we're going to go into this with you in a couple minutes, but a lot of people and the media and the left condemn and accuse the United States of a lot of things in the past. But today, for instance, slavery still practiced by Arab Muslims who are actually enslaving black Africans in Sudan and Mauritania, in Nigeria, in Libya. What do you think of these double standards in terms of the silence of the left when it comes to slavery and racism, when it's practiced by non-whites and by people that are not part of the Judeo-Christian civilization?
All right, first I'd like to expand on your statement about the foundation of America. The Judeo-Christian ethic that they brought to America stated, all people are born with equal intrinsic value, all life is sacred, and we have free will. Without that foundational ethic, you cannot stop discrimination. The reason that America was able to fight it and for people to continue to fight discrimination is because of that very foundational ethic.
And Diane, because Muslim Arabs continue to practice slavery today and racism today, is because in Islam and in Sharia, there is no foundation for the equality of all people.
Correct. The Sharia law differs from the Judeo-Christian ethic because in Sharia, it is stated that Muslims are superior to all other people. All other people are referred to as dimitude, lesser than. They do not have equal rights. And in many places, they have very few rights at all, or they pay for them, or they take taxes. So although there is an attempt today to make a cultural relativism that all cultures are equal or the same, that is a big lie. Cultures are different, and we have to understand that. And a Sharia law culture is diametrically opposed to what we practice in the West, which would make slavery possible in an Islamic country.
Thank you, Diane. So look, we've brought up the horrible system of apartheid in South Africa in the past, the horrible racism and the segregation that was practiced in the United States in slavery and after slavery. How does this fit in terms of what's going on in Israel today? Because to the best of my knowledge, Muslim Arabs actually have more freedom in Israel than they have in the entire Islamic Middle East.
Correct. The first question that I would put to everyone is, how is it that intelligent and compassionate people choose to believe the worst of the state of Israel and the best of everyone else? What has gone on that people who do have compassion and concern believe that Israel is an apartheid state? So let's talk about apartheid in Israel. And this is what I ask these people.
And Diane, before you go on, just so we stress this, as you pointed out also in your blog, the Students Against Apartheid in Israel, the SJP, the Students for Justice in Palestine, and all those who stand with the BDS movement, they're the ones at the core who are spreading this falsehood against Israel. So go ahead.
Yes, they're choosing to believe it, and millions of other people are choosing to believe it as well. So what I asked in the blog was, show me the laws on the books in Israel that used to be on the books in America and in South Africa that state Jews and non-Jews must be kept separate. Show me the laws that say that there must be separate schools, separate restaurants, separate hospitals, separate roads, separate everything in life. There are no laws in the state of Israel that separate the Jews from all others.
And Diane, is there anywhere in Israel where it says no Muslims allowed, no Christians allowed, no black people allowed? Where is this anywhere in Israel?
There are no laws or signs that declare no Muslims allowed.
Or no Arabs allowed, etc.
But there are signs in Israel that say no Jews allowed. This is on the roads that lead to the Palestinian territories. Jews are not allowed on the roads that go to the communities that are run by the Palestinian Authority. There are no laws in the state of Israel that state that people cannot go here or there because of race, color, religion, creed, or sexual orientation.
Right. Now, Diane, you point out in your blog, and thank you for bringing this, to the light, because all these leftists that are so against racism and bigotry and inequality, you point out there is one place Jews are not allowed to pray in Israel, and that's the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which sits on top of 2 Jewish temples. Jews and Christians are not allowed to pray there, but Muslims can pray everywhere.
That's right. So that is apartheid. Apartheid in Israel is the lifting up of Muslims, giving them special rights over everyone else. There is a water fountain in Israel that is Muslim only. It's on the Temple Mount. Only Muslims can drink from this fountain. Children that get thirsty who are not Muslim cannot drink from that fountain. So when people want to talk about apartheid, I'll show you apartheid on the Temple Mount. And although there is a mosque up there, well, there's 2. There's Al-Aqsa and the Dome, but they are on top of 2 Jewish temples. So when people talk about the Jews being colonizers, I have problems with that, because the temple, the mosque is on top of 2 Jewish temples that were there for thousands of years, which means the Jews have been in that area for more than 3,500 years. And yet people choose to believe that the Jews are colonizers. So the question comes back again, why is it that intelligent, compassionate people choose to believe the worst of the Jews and the best of others?
Absolutely. And the answer, of course, as you have documented and written about in your work, is, of course, Jew hatred and anti-Semitism and all the bias that comes with it. Look at these Democratic debates. Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Bloomberg, the rest of them. Look at Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. We can go on and on. Linda Sarsour. When are they going to say something about what you're talking about? Because we know that in that region, that there's, as you point out, there's actually large red signs warning Israeli citizens not to enter certain areas. And they've dotted the entrances to Palestinian Authority-controlled towns and villages. And here's the thing, Diane. What would happen to a Jewish person who was clearly in certain, let's say, Jewish attire, who would even be walking down a street in Gaza or the West Bank? What would happen to that individual?
Well, we know what happens. We know that Jews are murdered for the crime of being Jewish in Israel. We know this because there is pay for slay, which the media will not discuss. Kay Wilson wrote about it in her book, The Rage Less Traveled, that Muslims are paid to murder Jews. And if they end up in jail, their families get a stipend, which keeps them quite content. So you have a system where...
Diane,
yes.
The West Bank, Gaza Strip, the governments, the leaderships that are supposedly in one way or another in some kind of peace process, they pay their citizens to kill Jews.
Yes. And the money comes from countries like America and Canada and Europe because we support the Palestinian Authority. And yet there are no strings attached to that money. But I'd also like to point out to you, Jamie, that should there be peace, should two states develop, should it come to pass, a 24th Muslim state is established in the area, every single Jew living in the area that is controlled by the Palestinians will be forced to move unless that becomes part of Israel. Any Jew living in an area that becomes the new state of Palestine will be forced to leave. But no one is saying to Israel, well, the Muslims must have to leave then and go into the new Palestinian state. In fact, Palestinians or Muslims who call themselves Palestinians living in the state of Israel have clearly stated that they do not want their communities to be swapped. Muslims living in the state of Israel do not want to be switched over to a Palestinian Muslim state because they will lose their freedom. Women are not treated as equals. Gay people are murdered in Muslim states. No one talks about that either.
Diane, and as you point out other things that are not talked about, let's talk about segregated water fountains. I don't know anywhere in Israel in terms of Jews saying that a Muslim or an Arab or a Muslim Arab cannot drink from a certain water fountain. What we do know, as you point out, that on the Temple Mount, it's Muslims only. And when a 3-year-old Jewish child attempted to drink from the fountain on top of the Temple Mount, an officer actually ordered the father to remove the boy from the fountain to find a bottle of water fountain at a different location. So, and did Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon ever have a 1-hour feature on this, let alone a 60-second feature on it?
No, they didn't. But you know what else they don't discuss, Jamie? They don't talk about the no-go zones that are in Europe. Places where non-Muslims are not allowed to go. Places like Luton in Britain and Malmo in Sweden. Those are just 2 cities that have places where Muslims are happy to be there, but if you're not a Muslim, you're warned not to go there. But there are no places in the European community that say no Muslims, no blacks, no gays. There are no restrictions in Europe, in any of the countries, except Muslim no-go zones. And we don't talk about that either.
Thank you, Diane. Our time is up. Thank you so much for shedding light on this truth, that this accusation against Israel of it being an apartheid state is a complete libel and falsehood, and that the people and the regime that clearly perpetrates apartheid is the Palestinian, I would call it a death cult, that the Palestinians are perpetrating apartheid and their silence surrounding that. Thank you for bringing this up and for shedding light on it. Diane, we've got to go. Please tell our viewers where they can visit your work, and also where they can, the best place for them to order The Serpent and the Red Thread, which is your new book.
You're welcome to come and follow me on my blog at dianebiederman.com. And then you can purchase my book, The Serpent and the Red Thread, the definitive biography of evil, at amazon.com. Any of the Amazons, you can get it. And because we spoke today about the ethic underpinning the foundation of the West, that's from my book, Back to the Ethic, Reclaiming Western Values, also available on Amazon.
Diane Biederman, thank you so much for joining the Glazov Gang this evening, and thank you for being such a brave and noble truth teller in our world today.
Thank you for inviting me, Jamie.
Thank you. And thank you for joining the Glazov Gang. Make sure to visit dianebiederman.com and get her new book, The Serpent and the Red Thread. And we'll see you soon on the Glazov Gang. Good night.